Thanks everybody for waiting, and thanks for joining us today. This is the European City Facility, or the EUCF, information webinar on the launch of the sixth call for funding for the EUCF. The call is opened. It opened last week on the 15th of January. You can see there at the top, and the closing date is the 15th of March. So we have about 8 to 10 weeks to get our applications in. So this is a co-funded programme by the European Union. We are recording the session this morning, so this webinar will be available. The link will be sent around along with the slides and information, but just to make you aware that we are recording. Please turn off your mics. As I mentioned earlier, we are due quite a large number of people on the call today, so which is great, but please, if you could turn off your mics, make sure they're on mute. Whether you have your video on or not is up to you. Just be aware that it is the session is being recorded. So if your videos are on, you may be on the recording. There is a chat function, so please, if you could ask any questions in the chat function, and we will answer. We've got a Q&A session at the end. I'll talk maybe for 30 or 40 minutes, go through the slides, and then we'll have a section for Q&A. But if you do have any questions throughout, please just check, type them into the chat group. Ailish, our marketing communications officer, is with us today, and she's going to be helping me out. I can't see if I miss a question, or if I miss a raised hand or whatever, please, I apologize. But we will get to questions and answers at the end. So the purpose, so again, as I mentioned, this is an information session. This is a general information session for the launch of the sixth call, which was just launched. Okay, we did have a kind of pre-launch information session in November of last year, because we knew it was coming up, and we do understand that it actually takes quite a bit of time to put the applications together. So we did have a pre-launch webinar in November. This one is going into the specific sections in a little bit more detail. We will, and we are planning on, this is general information, we're planning on having another webinar in probably 4 or 5 weeks time, again in the middle of the call, just to go through specific questions and queries that have come into us, and also to look specifically at the application form itself. So this is a more general information session. So what is the purpose of the EUCF fund? Okay, and again, this is one just to really highlight and to make clear to everybody that this fund is not for capital costs of projects, but this is a fund to help deliver what we call an investment concept. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So just from the very start, to make that clear. So why is this fund needed? So the EU 2030 climate targets has identified that there's going to be a need for around €3 billion worth of spending in the public sector for you to help reach your 2030 targets. Somebody has done the analysis. It was not me, but somebody has done the analysis to say about 10 to 15% of that will come from EU and national public funds. So funds such as, for example, here in Ireland, our grants programs, your own local authority budgets, etc. So about 10 to 15% of that will come from your own and national public funds. That leaves about 85 to 90%. So where is the money going to come from for us to do all of the projects that are required to meet our 2030 targets? So it's about 85 to 95% of funding that we need to find, and that's going to come from private financing. So that is why we need this fund, because we need to find the money, we need to go and get the money, we need to attract the money, and therefore this fund is to help us attract it by developing that investment concept. Barriers at local level in terms of attracting that private finance. Okay, so again, why are we not getting that private finance? Why is that 85% eluding us at the moment? So again, a number of reasons in this diagram. I'm not going to go into too many, but just a couple there. So competition in your own local budget. So again, you all know, and this call is specifically for local authorities and public authorities. So competition in your own local budgets. When you're fighting for budgets to go and, for example, insulate one of your roofs in your buildings, and there are, potholes or water leaks or whatever it is out in your counties. You're all competing for small local budgets. lack of city capacity, a lack of cultural engagement with financial sector. So again, we're talking about how do we go out and get that message across to large financial institutes that here are our nice technical energy projects, and we need a lot of money for them. So it's about bridging that gap and learning that language, that investment and financial language, and engaging with them. Okay, so that's a really big gap that has been identified to date in terms of this. So again, this investment concept is all about teaching us and us learning as public sector authorities of how to speak that very specific financial and investment language, and to develop that investment concept to say, here, we've got these great projects, we've got these targets that we need to meet, and this is the money that we need invested in it. So again, just to reiterate there, we've got our policy context in terms of the EU Green Deals, the energy efficiency directives, renovation wave, etc., just to name a few. You're all well aware again of the EU policy and again national policy in terms of what we need to do to meet our climate and energy targets. You as local authorities of all and are just in the process of finishing off your local authority climate action plan. So climate and energy action planning is something you are all very well aware of. And something that you've been really deep in. I know, because I had talk and work with a lot of you, so I know exactly what you've been going through in the last 12 months or so in terms of your climate action planning. So we know what we need to do. We know why we need to do it in terms of the policy. We know what we need to do. These are the plans that we put in place. Now, again, as I mentioned already, who's going to pay for it? 10 to 15% will come from national public funds. But where's the rest going to come from? And it's that investment concept, or that financing and institutes that we want to target. And this EUCF is the bridging the gap there in the middle in terms of helping us, or helping you as local authorities to develop that investment concept. And I'll talk a little bit more in detail about what is in the investment concept in a second. But that's really why this fund is there. So what is the investment concept? What do we mean by this? Okay, so the investment concept basically is the end report that you're going to develop throughout this project, and it translates your project idea into financial language. That's basically what it is. So it's in a sense, a pre-feasibility study, and it includes the identification of the potential project pipeline. So again, that's what you've been doing now in your local authority climate action plans. You know the baseline, you know what the target is by 2030, and we've identified, or you have identified within your plans, the roadmap on how to get there in your project pipeline. And now we need to identify, well, what are the barriers in us getting there? Who are the stakeholders that we need to engage with? What is the legal analysis, the governance analysis, etc.? So how are we going to actually deliver on these on these climate action plans, and how are we going to invest in them? So these will be key to the specific investment concept. Is going to be key to implement the projects. Okay, so how are you going to actually implement the projects? Okay, and who's going to invest in them? And I just want to give one example. For example, is the ESCO, the street lighting program delivered by an ESCO. Okay, so the streetlight program, which again I know you're all well aware of, pilot project back in 2015, 2016 in one of the local authorities, and that is now a national program that's being rolled out. And again, national street lighting program, massive amount of funding required, and funding coming from Europe through the ELENA program to help develop that program, and funding then for you as local authorities to develop that. So that's one simple example of the type of projects that we're looking at. Again, there are other EU funding instruments. So there's EU funds that are there available. And again, I mentioned that the ELENA, the PDA, or the Project Development Assistance Program, that's another one that some of you will have heard of or been aware of. There was a national PDA or program here funded by the SEAI. There's a European one as well for the larger projects. ELENA funding then, as I mentioned already. There's the EFSI, which is the European Fund of Strategic Investments. The EUCF, which is the European Structural and Investment Fund. So there's a number of large European investment and structural funds groups out there that, again, this investment concept is going to help you specifically target for the large scale projects that we are now looking at needing to develop in terms of our climate action plans and hitting our 2030 targets. So as I mentioned already, the sixth call is now open. So this EUCF fund has been running for about 3 years now, 3 or 4 years. And there have been 5 previous calls. There's usually one, depending on the time of year, sometimes 2 calls a year. So this is the 6th call. Okay, and it's now open. It opened up last week on the 15th of January. The deadline for applications is the 15th of March, and it's 5 o'clock Central European time. So just again, be very aware when we're applying for these EU funds. It is always, deadlines are always given in Central European time. So 5 o'clock CET is 4 o'clock Irish time. So again, just be aware of that. We have seen, unfortunately, people not get in on time because we've got the wrong time on the clock. The 6th call is open only for new beneficiaries, okay? And what we mean by that is anybody who has previously, in any of the previous 5 calls, been funded previously, then you cannot apply again. If you have applied and not been successful, that is okay. You can reapply either with your same project or with a new project. That is absolutely fine. But if you have been awarded funding previously, so the beneficiary has been awarded, then you cannot apply again. So just to point that out. So those of you who have, and we have had a number of groups and local authorities who have applied and not been successful, that is okay. You are allowed to apply again. So again, the objective of the EUCF is the financial support, okay, and the development of that investment concept. That investment concept is the end result after the 2 years of this project. You have to have your investment concept written. There are templates available. So again, for those of you who are like, what is an investment concept? How do I even start? Don't worry. There are very clear tools and templates that are available through this funding stream. It's not only the financial aspect is the key point of this funding. It's to help you get your projects to, make sense to the financial investment institutes. But there are also other supports through the EUCF in terms of technical supports. And as I said, there's tools and templates and stuff. So that it's not just the financial support that's being given, financial support, but it's also other supports that are required. There's a budget, and again, I've highlighted there the middle section there. We're part of the Nordic countries and Western Europe group, so you can see the numbers of or the 3 separate areas of Europe, let's say. So within our area, which is in the middle there, there's a budget under the 6th call of 1.14 million. Okay, and that 1.14 is going to aim is to support 19 projects through this program. Okay, so that there's hoping to support 19 projects from those countries in the 6th call. Okay, so there's a 4.5 million budget across, but within our specific section, which is the Nordic countries in Western Europe, there's a budget of 1.14 million in this 6th call. Just looking at the previous calls and just to summarize, and again, some of you will have seen this before. So the EUCF, as I said, this is the 6th call. So out of the previous 5 calls, and you can see there, so Ireland has had 10 applications made. Okay, 3 have been successful. There is 1 that is complete. There's 1 that's underway, and there's 1 that was, well, it was just starting. It's also underway now. It was provided funding, or it was successful under the last call last year in the 5th call. So they have received their contract, and that they are now underway in developing their IC or investment concept. So you can see there's a list of all the European countries. Ireland here, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse there, but right in the middle is Ireland, and you can see compared to a lot of other European countries, we're quite low down there. So we've only actually submitted 10 applications. So there's a great amount of possibilities there for Ireland. Only 3, as I said, have been successful, which means those 3 beneficiaries can no longer apply again. However, everybody else can. So what are the benefits of the EUCF fund? So again, obviously, the main point of this fund is that it's providing you with financial support. So there is a lump sum of €60,000 that is provided to you or to the successful applicant, okay, to use to develop your investment concept. And that funding, the €60,000, can be used for in-house development, consultancy supports, or anything that you need. Okay, so the funding is there for you. It can be used for internal staff costs, for your own in-house staff costs, if you're developing in-house the investment concept. If you're using consultants, that's okay as well. You can use the €60,000 towards that, or anything you need. It is provided in a lump sum at the start of the project, so that it is there to fund you as you go along. From investment concept to investment. So again, the aim here is that we deliver and develop and deliver the projects that are in your local authority climate action plans, or your CCAP or other action plans that you have. So it's really, really important that we get that investment concept and we then deliver on the investment, or we go and find successful institutes to help us fund the actual delivery of the projects. So again, through the, not only do you get the €60,000 in terms of financial support, but there are other technical and financial supports that are available through the EUCF team. So there are financial models, there's financial analysis tools that are provided to you, investor decks, which again, as I mentioned earlier, templates and models that you can use to develop your investment concept. There's peer-to-peer learning. There's a number of workshops and supports through not only us here in Ireland in the Irish Energy Hub, but again through the European Central Desk, Help Desk. So there's plenty of supports here to get you from where you are right now, your application, to develop the investment concept, and then most importantly to make sure that investment concept can then be delivered on afterwards. So that is the aim here. So it's not just the financial support, but there's lots of peer-to-peer learning and tool support as well. So the support system that we have, again, the EUCF team and the Central Help Desk are the main team based in Europe. And then you have nationally, there's a national hub. The national hub is the Southeast Energy Agency, and then the country expert is myself with the Southeast Energy Agency. If you have any questions at all, so there's an email address there, contact us at, and it's ce.ireland@eucityfacility.eu. So it is a central email address that goes to the EUCF team and Central Help Desk, but it has Ireland there in the name, and that gets sent directly to us. Okay, there's a link there in the slides. Again, you'll all be sent the slides, so check out who are the country experts in the national hubs in your country. Obviously, I have just said that to you now. Southeast Energy Agency and myself are the ones for Ireland, but there, if you're interested in seeing who the country experts and national hubs are for any of the other European countries, you can go to that link. Again, the supports that are available right now for you throughout the application process, which is what we're here to talk about now. So there are guidance from the National Help Desk, and we will send this on to you. And I'm just going to pull this across so that you can see this for a second. So there are guidelines. There's a number of guidelines that have been produced by the National Help Desk, by the European Help Desk for this. We will send this on to you. So this is the guidelines for applicants. I'm going to come back to that in a second because there's a few things that I want to show you. But there are specific guidelines there, and they have been drafted at the European Help Desk level. Okay. We are here at a national level to do a number of national events. Today is the national information session, the launch of the call. So that's what we're doing. And we're looking at also doing other tailored training. So as I mentioned, in about 3 or 4 weeks' time, we'll be holding another webinar where we're specifically going to go through the application form. We can look at again. So if you have any queries, we will answer them on the day. So any queries that you have, please go away, look at the guidelines, look at the application form today, and come back to us or contact us with any of your queries, and we can make sure that we can provide tailored training if there's a few queries that are coming up. So for example, calculations of the energy savings, investment sizes, etc., etc. So we can tailor any training that is required. So please do have a look. If you've got any specific queries or want specific training in any element of the application form, please come back to us. We have about, as I said, 8 weeks or so left till the deadline, so we can have a number of other events or training sessions specifically related to any queries you have. Support then for the IC or the investment concept development. So if you are successful, we can also provide support throughout that. Now, it is very clear our job as the national expert on the country hub is we cannot complete your EUCF application form, and we cannot complete your or help you develop the IC or the investment concept. Okay, we are not allowed to do that, but we are here to advise, to make you to give you contacts, to give you training, to give you guidance. Okay, so just through whether it's the application process, which is what we're here to talk about today, or indeed if you're successful and get awarded the funding and go on to develop your IC or your investment concept, we are here throughout the process to support you. Now, eligibility, and again, I think this is one thing why perhaps why we have had a lower number of applications from Ireland in the last 3 to 4 years. The main eligibility, or number one eligibility check for you was, and it's this middle one here, which I did have highlighted, so apologies, I'm not sure what happened to the slide, but do you have a sustainable energy and climate action plan? Okay, I'm going to talk about that a bit more in a second. There is as soon as you go on to, and again, we will send you the link, and the link is available here, eucityfacility.eu. Okay, so take the test. You have to answer yes to these 5 eligibility questions, and if you are yes for the 5 questions, then you are eligible to apply for the funding. So the first question is, are you a municipality or local authority? So again, today's webinar targeted at the local authority sector, so you should everybody on the call should be a local authority, so should be able to answer yes to that question. Is your local authority grouping so you can apply as a single local authority, but also as a grouping of local authorities, or a local public entity aggregating local authorities. So for example, there's a number of energy agencies, we are ourselves one, so a local energy agency who is aggregating a number of local authorities as an example, or another public entity. So you can apply as a single local authority or as a group. Are you, or is your local authority a member of the EU27? So yes is the answer again. And then this was the question here. So do you have a sustainable energy and climate action plan, or a CCAP? And again, previously there were a few local authorities who were signed up to the Covenant of Mayors, and only a few local authorities who had developed their sustainable energy and climate action plan, or their CCAP. In the last 2 years, the eligibility has changed, and it's become a little bit wider. So they said, well, you may not have a CCAP, but do you have another local climate and energy plan with mitigation targets? So they moved it or widened it, didn't have to be just the Covenant of Mayors Sustainable Energy Climate Action Plan. Any local climate and energy plan is now sufficient to be able to apply for this funding. And as I mentioned at the very start, I'm well aware of you as local authorities over the last 12 months developing your LA caps. So you will now all be able to answer yes to that question. So again, you will be eligible under this question. Will you be able to provide a proof of political commitment? Okay, so again, it used to be linked to the Covenant of Mayors. So again, European language talk about mayors. Here we have chief execs in the local authorities, and we've got Cathaoirleachs, and we've got local representatives. Okay, so again, the EU will talk mainly about mayors. That's not always relevant here, but you need to have political representative support. Okay, and again, that's I'll talk a bit more about that. And do you commit to the EUCF monitoring period for 2 years? So there's a 2-year life on the programme. So if you can say yes to all of these, you are eligible and you can apply for the funding. I mentioned their application as a grouping. So again, I'm not going to go into too much detail. Again, previously, if you were applying as a group of local authorities, at least the lead applicant, or at least one of the local authorities or one of the group who would be the lead applicant, must have the CCAP or local authority climate action plan. So that just qualifies as part of the grouping. So for example, if you had a group of 4 local authorities, 2 of whom didn't have a local authority climate action plan or the CCAP, that's okay as long as one of them did, and they would act as the lead applicant. So just to point that out, you can still do that, but again, as it stands, you should all be eligible now under the climate climate and energy plan, because you should all have them developed. So sorry, just to say there, if you do apply as a group, the amount is still €60,000, and that €60,000 is split between the group and whichever way you have. So it's €60,000 per application. Again, and I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but this is just, again, from a local authority point of view, or from a funding point of view, to make sure that you are officially recognised as a tier of local government, a local authority in specific political and administrative structure. So again, yes, everybody on the call today is specific local authority, and you are all eligible under this criteria. So that's the eligibility. So again, just to summarise, and we'll send out the link there, go to the link, check that you are eligible, that you can say yes to each of those 5 questions, and then you are eligible to apply. So now we look at the application process. So again, we've mentioned the eligibility checks. If you are not eligible, you cannot go forward into the EUCF application. Okay. If you're not eligible, you'll be sent to the central help desk, and we will contact you and see what's happened there, because certainly as far as I'm aware, everybody, all of the local authorities here should now be able to answer yes to those questions. The next section then I'm just going to talk briefly about is the EUCF application. I'm going to say briefly because, again, as I've mentioned, we're in about 3 or 4 weeks' time, we're going to have a specific session webinar on the actual application. Today is just a general information session. And then after you have completed the application, there's an evaluation process. The evaluation is based on 4 criteria. Okay, and again, I will talk a little bit about the evaluation process in a few minutes. Very detailed. And you should be able to look at the evaluation criteria, what is it they're looking for, and therefore be able to complete your application sufficiently. So the application form is split into 4 main sections. It's the identification of the applicant, political commitment, the proposed investment project, which is the crux of it all. What is your actual project? And then how are you going to use the support? So the €60,000, what is it you're going to spend it on? You do need to have the 2 supporting documentation. So again, when we go back, if you remember back to the eligibility criteria, do you have a local authority action plan? Well, you need to actually provide that at the application stage. So you do upload your CCAP or your local authority action plan. And again, one of the other eligibility criteria was, do you have political support? So you need to, again, there are templates available for what the letter of support needs to say. But you do need to have that signed by your political representatives, whether it's the mayor, Cathaoirleach, or equivalent. So, and again, you do need to upload that. So you need to have the application form completed with the 4 sections and the 2 supporting documentation pieces of documentation that you do upload. Just to go into a little bit more detail then about each of the 4 sections on the application form. So again, identification of the applicant, that's the easy bit, I'm going to say. So that's, who are you? What type of applicant are you? Are you a local authority, etc.? Your tax identification numbers, the population size of the county that you're representing, or the area that you're representing, organisation, department address, phone number, email, etc. Okay. 2 here that you might have noticed is the LAU code and your NUTS 3 code. So the LAU, Local Administrative Units code, and the EU NUTS 3 code. If you don't know these, that's okay. We can help you with these. These are numbers that you and all local authorities have in the form of an LAU code, and NUTS 3 is the regional code, European regional code for funding. So again, if you do not know your LAU or your NUTS 3 code, that is okay. Come to us and we'll help you get them. So that's the number 1, identification of who you are, who is applying for the project. Again, I've mentioned a number of times now the political commitment. Okay, so again, Your CCAP or your local authority action plan, again, we know that that's already gone or about to go through that process of political support. So again, commitment to the mitigation targets. Yes, you've got your plan in place and it's been signed or approved by councillors, for example. And also then the letter. So again, there is an EUCF template there. So the political commitment to development of the investment concept. So we have our plan. Now we are going to develop the investment concept as to how we're going to pay for some of the areas within the plan. Now, just again to be clear there, the investment concept or the proposed investment project does not have to be the entire local authority action plan. Okay, it's an element of it. So political commitment for the investment concept. And again, as I mentioned, there's a template there for a letter, does need to be signed. So those are the two documents that will show political commitment. Number 3 then is the main part of the application. So what is your proposed investment project? So what is the project? And very importantly, how is it linked to your local authority climate action plan or your CCAP? So you've got your CCAP, you are uploading your CCAP, and now the project that you are applying for funding to develop your investment concept has to be linked to the CCAP. Okay, so link it back to the plan of what is the specific mitigation target or mitigation measure that's outlined in the climate action plan that you've developed and that you've submitted. How is this actually linked? And be very, very specific. Again, just a tip for the application. Okay, the evaluators are independent. They're outside us. They're not anything to do with us in the national hub. It's a group in Europe. And they have, and I will go through it in a second, very specific criteria for evaluating these applications. You want to make it as simple for them as possible. So when we talk about project description and objectives and the implementation method, the main investment sector, engagement of stakeholders, intended measures, expected size of investment and expected impacts. A lot of these things will or should be, or you will have already completed these as part of your local authority climate action plan. When you're completing the application, make sure you mention it. So for example, on page 55, measure, mitigation measure number 6, as outlined on page 55 of the application of the climate action plan, as an example. So give it, signpost it, because the evaluator is going to look at it. He's going to have a lot of these applications from across Europe, and he wants to tick his boxes. Is it linked to the local authority action plan? Yes, there it is. It's on page 55 or whatever it is. So really do signpost it. What's the size of it and what's the impact against the project target? So again, for example, your local authority climate action plan might have, I don't know, a 2030 target of X, reduce carbon by X tons. This specific project may be 5% of that or 10% of that or whatever it is. So what is the size of this specific project and what is the impact of it against the targets that are set out in your local authority action plan? Most importantly as well, this very last one here, the potential for replication and or upscaling. Okay, so we're a group of local authorities, none of us hopefully trying to reinvent the wheel. We've all got very similar targets, we've all got very similar measures that need to be completed, and we all need to help each other out. So very similar to the Pathfinder, I'm sure now at this stage a lot of you know or have heard of or are working with or towards a Pathfinder funding with the SEAI. Again, we as groups of local authorities working together, sharing our ideas, piloting projects and sharing them. So this is a very, very similar. What is the potential for replication and or upscaling of this particular project so that we can share it out amongst not only Ireland, this is a European fund, this is the Irish stream of it, but it's a European fund and we all need to be sharing our ideas and our successful projects. So really important that we outline what is the potential for replication and or upscaling. Section 4 then is the use of the EUS support. So again, there's a drop-down menu in the application form and it's asking you for, well, what are the kind of activities that €60,000 is going to fund? Okay, activities funded by the EUCF grant amount. So, for example, your own in-house staff costs for the development, consultants that you're subcontracting to help you develop it, legal advisors, technical advice, etc. So it doesn't have to just be the in-house time. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. It can be for any element of the of things. So where is the €60,000 going to be spent over the next period? Okay, and there is a drop-down menu, and you can choose the activities. Last question then that it'll ask on the application form is the preparation of the EUCF application. So who has actually prepared this EUCF application? And again, there's no rights or wrongs here. They're just asking for the information. Have you developed it and completed it in-house? Again, have you used a subcontractor? Have you used an energy agency? Have you done it in-house or whatever it is? So again, no right or wrong answer. They're just asking for that information. So that's the application, the 4 sections of the application in a nutshell. I'm just going to again drag across this guidelines for applications for applicants just to show you. Okay, so again, it's very, very detailed. And if we go to the application form in the guidelines, it will, again, everything that I've just spoken about there, it will go through it in great detail. Okay, requirements of the section, and again, it goes literally. So this is the first section that I mentioned there, which was the identification of the applicant. So title, what is the title? What is the description? What is the implementation period, etc. So it goes into a lot of detail as to exactly what kind of information it is looking for in the application form and where you can get it and what kind of information that you can have. Okay, so we will, of course, send out the copies of these guidelines to everybody, but they're very, very detailed. So today, as I mentioned, is only a general information. I'm not going to go into too much detail about any specific section. But again, if you go through these guidelines yourself, any queries, please come back to us. And as I mentioned, we will be having a more detailed session in 3 to 4 weeks. So that's just to outline there, in brief, what the application form includes and what you must submit. Just a couple of errors, I guess, that the evaluators have come across in the past that they just want to make you aware of. So at least one mitigation target from the CCAP. So again, I mentioned that earlier, I made quite a point of it. Link it back. There's no point in putting in your Sustainable Energy Action Plan and then looking for funding for a project that is not mentioned in your Climate Action Fund, okay? And that has been done, again, as I said, these are examples of errors that they've seen in the past, okay? So within your project, there has to be at least one mitigation target that you have mentioned in your plan that you are linking to this. And again, link it, make it clear. Yes, it's mitigation target number, whichever, on page 55 of the CCAP, which we have, or Climate Action Plan that we have submitted, okay? So make it very, very clear. The expected investments and impacts must be summarised per sector in a table. So again, in the application form, there is a table that you will put in all the detail. The impacts and sizes are automatically calculated, okay? Again, in that guideline for applications that I've just shown you, there are examples of this, okay? And again, just to be very clear, within your table, which sector and which investment and what are the impacts of each of those measures. It automatically will calculate it for you or add them all up, but you need to summarize them per investment and per impact in the table. So as I said, there are examples in the guidelines there for applicants. We will go through in another webinar in slightly more detail the actual specific application form. The projects are focused on energy efficiency, okay? So energy efficiency is the priority. Renewable projects, of course, can be included, but energy efficiency is a priority and they're appreciated in the evaluation of criterion 1. Okay, so criterion 1, I'll talk about in a second, the evaluation criterion. So the ambition of the proposed investment project. So energy efficiency first. And again, I think from a local authority and certainly national point of view, that's the same message that we're working towards here. Energy efficiency first. A good description of the government structure and stakeholder engagement strategy. Okay, and again, I'm I'm going to assume or going to guess that, a lot of you will have that already, specifically, again, from the last 12 months where you've already gone out to engage with stakeholders through the development of your local authority and climate action plans. You've all got strong governance structures, etc. And again, within the guidelines, there are very clear examples of what it means by this and what it's looking for. But you have to address all the elements, again, in the application form when it's asking you questions about these. Incoherent and unrealistic figures. Okay, so for expected investment size and impact, again, they're not asking you for audits. They're not going to check, to the kilowatt hour or to the kiloton of carbon, but it needs to be realistic. So if you say, for example, I don't know, you're going to put on 100 kilowatt PV on a building and your savings are, crazy, it's very obvious that's unrealistic. So it has to be coherent and realistic figures that you're putting in. Again, that comes under the evaluation of criterion 4, which is the coherence and plausibility section. Applicants must be unique and tailored to the local context. So again, we're tying it back to your local authority climate action plan. These are your local plans, so it has to be tailored towards your local context, okay? And again, I mentioned before at the start, they're beneficiaries from previous calls. So successful, that should be reworded. Successful beneficiaries from previous calls cannot apply again. If you have applied previously and you have not been successful, that is okay. But if you have received funding already through one of the previous EUCF calls, then you cannot apply again. I've mentioned the mandatory supporting documents already, that it is your CCAP or your local authority climate action plan and the letter of support. Evaluation then, and I'm conscious of time. That's funny, I said to Ailish at the start, gosh, I'll probably be over in half an hour, and 40 minutes later I'm still talking, but that's anybody who knows me is probably well used to that. A couple of slides then on the evaluation, just to close off. So again, the evaluation process. So once you've submitted, you've checked your eligibility, you're eligible, you download the application, or you don't download it, sorry, it is an online application. Submit the application, submit your supporting documentation, and now we get to the evaluation process, okay? Evaluation process will take around 2 months after the call closing. So the call closes, as a reminder, on the 15th of March at 5 o'clock CET, which is 4 o'clock Irish time, okay? So we'll have a 2-month evaluation process and the results will be sent to you by email. If you are unsuccessful, you should receive feedback and you are redirected to the help desk. Okay, so if you have been unsuccessful in the past, we should have contacted you. If we haven't, please come to us, because we can give you feedback that are feedback reports that are available. If any of you have applied in the past and been unsuccessful and did not receive a feedback report, then please contact us straight away. The evaluation is conducted by a dedicated team of evaluators. So I've mentioned that already. It's an independent group. It's separate to ourselves as advisors. Each application is evaluated individually by 2 different evaluators, okay? And the third evaluator is only assigned if there's a discrepancy in the scores. The final score is determined by the average of the 2 scores. It takes 2 months and the feedback is given. Again, and I'm going to just drag this guidelines across to the screen so you can see. If we go to the evaluation section, okay, so again, there is a very clear evaluation section of the guidelines. And not only does it tell you what's being evaluated, it's giving you a score for each section, okay? So for example, your ambition of the proposed concept is worth 7 points, okay? So there's a total of 20 points and 7 points is given to the ambition, okay? And again, it's very clear, 1.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. There are 7 areas that it's looking for you to address within the application form. Similarly, with the governance structure, there's 5 points. Make sure that you look at the evaluation. What are they evaluating on? What are they looking for? So that when you are submitting your application, you make sure that you're hitting all of these queries, okay? So the evaluation is very clear. Section 1, there are 7 points. Section 2, which is the governance, is 5 points. Stakeholder engagement is 5 points, and the coherence and plausibility are you being realistic, is worth 3 points, okay? There are minimum criteria required for some of the sections, okay? So a quality threshold of 50%. So you need to get at least in sections 2, 3, and 4. So you will not move on to section 3, or the evaluation will not move you on. So for example, if you only score 2 out of 5 points here, you are ineligible. Okay, so you need to score at least 2.5 points, 2.5 points, and 1.5 points in these sections for you to be eligible. They have removed the minimum criteria for section 1. Okay, and again, the reason for that is there was a lot of projects in the past that weren't meeting the 50% under the ambition, solely because there were some excellent projects that just weren't, let's say, that were smaller scale than some of the other projects. So they have now removed the 50% or the minimum score for section 1. So it is a maximum score of 20 points, but you do have to score 50% in sections 2, 3, and 4. So that is the evaluation criteria, that's the application, and that's the process. So the entire journey, just to summarise before I finish and open up to the questions and answers. Pre-application is now, okay, so there's plenty of information and guidance on the EUCF website, on EU events, and through national information sessions such as this one that we're having today. The application process then, so the eligibility check is the first thing you want to do, and then go to your application and start completing your application. If you're successful, you will be given a grant agreement, and you will sign that with the EUCF, and you will receive, well, 65%, so it's €60,000, and you get an upfront payment of 65% of that funding. You will then develop your investment concept using all of the tools and supports that are available. And the end result is that you submit your investment concept report, and once that is validated, you will receive the remaining 35% of the funding. So that is, and I know I've gone through, probably spoken for a little bit longer than I had planned on this morning, but there is quite a lot in it. As I said, this is a general information session, and we will hope to hold probably in about 4 weeks' time. Middle to end of February, we'll be having another webinar where we both look at specific queries that have come in between now and then, but most importantly, we'll be looking at a little bit more detail at the actual application form. So just thank you for your time. We have a few minutes. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, and we have a few minutes if anybody has any questions and answers, or sorry, questions, and I will try and answer them. So I'm just looking at the chat group here. So first one, I'm just going to go through them in order. Hi, if the funding is just to develop an investment concept to get private funding projects, is this not already covered by the SEI Pathfinder? Yep, so Paddy, it's very similar to that. So this is opening the door. So the Pathfinder is national funding from the SEAI. So this specifically is for European funding, opens the door for European funds as well. But yes, it is similar. It's a similar concept. Kevin, can universities apply? No, is my understanding. You have to be, as I said there, the eligibility, you have to be linked to a local authority. Chris, does the mitigation target have to be at the jurisdiction-wide level, or can it apply to local authority operations only? Yes, Chris, it can only apply to local authorities. It does not have to be county-wide or regional-wide. It can be your own specific targets and mitigation measures. Yeah. Michael, as the EUCF speaks of cities, does this proposed project have to relate to no, urban areas are also, Michael, good question. You're right, it does. It's called the EU Cities Fund, but any local authority, so your urban area or rural area, or as long as you're a local authority, as I said, the eligibility criteria there, so you're a local authority, you've got your plan. These are your targets, these are your mitigation measures. So you will be able to apply on that basis. Another question from Paddy. 5 previous calls and only 3 successful from Ireland, only one of which has drawn funding. doesn't bode well for future projects given the amount of time that would seem to be involved in an application. I would suggest, Paddy, that yeah, that's up to you whether you want to spend time on an application or not. The three applications have been successful. All three of them have drawn down funding, so I'm not sure yet. So 65% is given as a lump sum at the start. So there are two that are still underway. One of the projects has been completed, and there are two that are underway. So they have drawn down funding. Jeanette, where can we access the successful projects? I will just double check that. Good question. We have a list. Of the successful applications, and I will just have to check with the EUCF fund. Can we make that publicly available? The ones that I'm pretty sure most of you will be aware of them already. Donegal were successful. They're the IC who have completed. Fingal County Council were the successful ones in call 5, so they've just started. And apologies, I can't remember off the top of my head who the other successful applications at the start. Cormac's there's just put up a link there, so that may be the list there. So the last call that we had, or the last meeting that we had Fingal and Babel, who were supporting Fingal County Council, spoke about their experience with the application. That recording should be available. If anybody wants that, please just contact us, and Eilish will pass on the recording to that as well. So I hope that's answered all of your questions. Any other questions? If you want, just unmute yourself and shout out. If you don't want to type in, that's okay. We have another minute or two if anybody wants to ask anything. Okay, otherwise, thank you very much for attending. As I said, Eilish will pass on the recording and the slides. We will send on the application guidelines, the link to the EUCF funding. And as I said, any queries, please come to us. We will answer on a one-to-one basis. We can work with you individually. As I said, we will also be in about 3 or 4 weeks' time hosting a second webinar with more specific look at the actual application form. If any of you are looking at applying for the fund, please contact us. Let us know. We're here to help. We're here to support and advise. We can talk to you about your ideas and your projects and help you along the way. Okay, if there's no more questions, thanks very much, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.